AI automations are becoming more powerful than ever, and they can create insane leverage for sellers who can use them right. The good news is that you can now automate pretty much anything with tools like N8N. You've probably heard about N8N before, and if you are like most people, you got intimidated. But the truth is that it's actually way easier than you might think. In this video, you are going to learn the 80% of N8N that you'll actually use. We are going to build a simple automation, step by step, so by the end, you'll have the tools and the confidence to start automating your own Amazon business. So let's dive in. Today we are going to talk about N8N, which is an extremely powerful automation platform. I'm sure you've seen these diagrams somewhere, so now you know that this is actually N8N, which is a node-based automation platform. This means that it allows us to create AI automations and AI agents without really understanding how to code. So first of all, we need to clarify, because we will be using this terminology a lot. When we talk about AI automation, we are talking about a fixed sequence of steps, right? Where we are automating a specific process that always go from A to B to C. When we talk about AI agents, we talk about a dynamic agent that can reason and use its logic, of course, leveraging the LLMs, the large language models, to choose actions and make decisions based on context. So for example, here we are looking at an AI agent. Now, why does it matter? Why does it matter to someone like you, to an Amazon seller or a D2C brand owner? First of all, it allows us to automate operational tasks that eat your time. As I mentioned, these automations can be extremely complex and powerful that will just take stuff off our plate and save our time. It also allows us to connect all of our tools we actually use in business, whether it's your Seller Central, your spreadsheet, your Notion, Slack, all of your data. We can connect it and work with it, whether it's for an automation or for an agent. And of course, lastly, we can really leverage the large language models and take it to the next level. Because if we just use a chatbot like Claude or ChatGPT, we are basically very reactive, right? We are just prompting the AI. But here we can implement them into our automations so they can basically act independently. And this is what makes it extremely powerful. Now, there are a lot of use cases. And once you learn the basics from this video, the sky is the limit, right? Suddenly you will see so many opportunities in your business for automations. But to give you some ideas, you can automate your inventory monitoring and alerts. You can sync data between platforms, right? Taking data from Seller Central into your spreadsheets. You can create automatic reporting. It can help you with product research, competitor monitoring, and of course, automating stuff like customer support. But as I said, the biggest unlock here, it's not about the specific automation we are going to create today, even though it's very useful. It's more about showing you the basics and building a strong foundation and understanding of N8N. Because once you understand how it works, you understand the possibilities. And the next time you do a task in your business, you work, you will realize that a lot of the things you do can be automated. Because most of the things you do in your Amazon business are done on a recurring basis, right? You are not reinventing the wheel. You are likely repeating the same tasks and processes over and over again. And when you learn this, you will realize that you can actually automate many of them using everything you'll learn today. So first of all, we are going to set up our N8N account. So you simply go to their website. I will leave all these links in the descriptions. And here we basically have two options, right? Either we will host N8N in a cloud, which means that we will pay this monthly fee, or you can self-host it, which is a little bit more complicated, and we are not going to cover that today, because the easiest way really is to set up your starter account here, start a free trial, and follow along to build this automation to actually understand how it works. One little trick, if you are going to get your subscription, you can ask ChatGPT or Claude to find you a discount code. I just managed to save like 100 euros by just asking for a discount code in ChatGPT. Now, once you set up your account, in the account, you will see this. We just logged into the account, and the first thing we are going to do, we are going to switch to a dark theme because I don't want to work with the light theme. Okay, now, there are two main areas that we are interested in. First of all, workflows. This is where we will build our automations and agents, and credentials. Credentials are essentially the tools we connect to N8N, right? So if I check here, there can be my Asana account, my Google Sheets, my Gmail, my Slack, my Notion. All of these tools that we want to work with in our automations and agents, we will be connecting. And then workflows. Of course, we can create folders to keep everything organized, and then create our workflows. So I prepared here one workflow where I want to show you the node types, because as I mentioned, N8N is a node-based automation platform, so we will be working with specific nodes. So let me just quickly go through these. We are not going to cover all of them because there are a lot. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of nodes in N8N. But if we categorize them into these 4 categories, it will make it easier to wrap our mind around how all of this works. First of all, there are trigger nodes. The trigger nodes are essentially a setup that triggers the workflow, that triggers the automation, right? It can be manual, that it happens every time we click. It can be scheduled, that it is running on a regular basis, once every day, once every week, once every month. We can have a webhook that is essentially triggered through an API call through another application, or maybe form submission, or when another workflow is executed, or by another app. Let's say when we get an email, a workflow is triggered, right? This is pretty self-explanatory. These are the key triggers that will be triggering most of our workflows we're going to build. Now, one of the most important nodes are the action nodes, right? These action nodes are there to do something in a specific tool or a specific software, like your Google Sheets, Gmail, Notion, Reddit, YouTube. The key here is that N8N has hundreds of pre-made integrations, right? So as you can see, it can be send a message in Gmail, create a task in Asana, create a new row in a spreadsheet. And these are already pre-made, which makes it easier to work with the specific tools. So every time we go here and let's say we search for Asana or any other software, you see all of the actions on the right side, actions within a project, creating tasks, and so on. And this really goes for most of the softwares you can think of, your like ClickUp, Notion, whatever you can think of. But sometimes there is not made integration in N8N. There's no pre-made integration. So what we can do is to use a HTTP request. It is essentially the same thing, but we need to define the action through an API call. And I will show you everything here in this video. It sounds a bit intimidating, but actually it's pretty straightforward, right? The pre-made integrations already took care of the API call, and we just choose what we want to do. But with the HTTP request, if there is no action node for that particular software in N8N, we can actually create our own action using this node. So we will be using it a lot as well. The next type are the logic nodes. These are essentially controlling the path, the flow of the data in our workflow, right? So there are if node switches, merging, looping, basically controlling how the data flows. Like if you have true or false, merging data from 2 sources into one, and so on. We will be also using these. There is one important, which is a code logic node. And this is where we can program. And again, I know it sounds intimidating, but we can program how the data will be transformed. And I don't know anything about code, so I will be using something like Claude to actually help me write the code anytime I want to do something with that particular data set I have and I want to change it into something else, right? So I will be using Claude as my development partner here to kind of help me build these and write the code whenever I need it. And lastly, an important one, which we will also cover today, are AI nodes. There are specific nodes called AI agents, where we can choose the LLM, the large language model for the chat model. It can be your Claude, your ChatGPT, and then we can give it access to specific tools, right? And this is the difference then between the automation and the agent. But the beauty of this is that we can actually connect both of these. So we can have partly automation that's taking data, processing the data, and at the end, it's sending it to an agent who decides what to do with it. So we can, again, similarly how we define these tools here, like Asana, Gmail, we can give our AI agent access to these tools, which is, again, extremely powerful. So now we covered the node types. And there are a few approaches when we develop these workflows. First of all, N8N actually has their own AI where we can ask and describe what we want, and N8N will design the workflow for us. This is very useful. It saves time because it kind of builds the foundation. The second option which you can use is to ask your ChatGPT or Claude to generate a JSON, which is essentially a code you can then upload into N8N to create your workflow, right? So we kind of describe to Claude what we want, and then ask him like, hey, this is an N8N automation. I want you to generate the JSON. We will download it, upload it to create the workflow. But we are not going to do that today because I believe that in order to be able to finalize these automatically generated workflows, you need to be able to understand the basics. You need to build a few workflows manually because the ones that are automatically generated are not perfect. It's like 70% there, and you need to make some tweaks to actually make it work, which you won't be able to do unless you build something yourself from scratch. So that's what we are going to do today. And we are going to use AI as our build partner. And in this case, I'm going to use Claude. I actually created a project from this with a specific system prompt that he's designed to be my advisor. And I will share this prompt down below in the description. All of the resources and the template of what we are going to build today, you will find it in the resources. So as you can see, this will be my N8N workflow design assistant. So he's not doing the work for me, but he will be guiding me through the build. Now, what I want to say is that this video is supposed to show you that you can build these automations with zero experience. Even if you have no past experience whatsoever, this is your first time hearing about N8N, you don't know how to code, you don't know anything about automations, you're still good to go. You will be able to learn the 80% of N8N that you will be actually using to build the basic automations. And I also want to make it clear that when we work with clients or when we are building our automations, I work with the developer on my team, but this time it will be me building it. Right? So you will see that even if I haven't spent hundreds and hundreds of hours building this, we will be able to build this live using Claude as our guidance, right? So this should give you some confidence that you will be able to do the same. Now we can finally go ahead and talk about first automation. We're going to set up a competitor price monitoring. It is a simple automation, I believe useful to most sellers, right? It will show us the basics, but at the end of the day, as I mentioned before, it is not about competitor price monitoring. It's about you learning how to use this so you can then unlock so many more possibilities and opportunities in your own business. So we will be creating an automation to essentially scrape competitor listings once a day. Here we have the prompt that we will use with Claude to essentially explain what we are trying to do. You know, I want to scrape competitor prices daily based on their ASIN. We will use Apify, which is a website scraper. And the prices will be tracked in a spreadsheet with history, simple date, ASIN, price columns. If prices change, I want to be notified via Slack. It will run daily at 8 a.m. So help me design the workflow step by step, node by node. Here I have 3 ASINs. So we will now get to work, but before we get to work, I want to stress out a few key lessons here. First of all, expect errors. I will be building this live and some things will break, but it is part of the process, right? It is an iterative process. We go step by step building our automation, but of course something will go wrong and that's perfectly fine, right? And I want you to see that every time we encounter some hiccup, we will be able to solve it. Next, I want to stress out that it's important to start simple. Really, the simplest automation. That's why we are setting up competitor price monitoring, right? We are not creating this complex dashboard with AI agents on top of it because those things usually break and it's kind of hard to use it, right? The small, very purposeful, very specific automations, agents will be always more powerful than some one complex all-in-one solution, right? Because we need to keep in mind the compounding effect, right? We need to understand that if we spend 30 minutes today to save ourselves, 1 hour a week, and we do this multiple times, identifying little automations here and there, that's where the biggest leverage is, right? And also, I want to stress out, document as you build, because likely these automations, you need to be organized and write things down as you go. So for future reference, if you go, you need to tweak and update, you understand what you've actually built, because it's easy, you know, after a week you build it, you kind of get lost. What was the original logic behind it? So now we will go to Claude and this custom project, and I will copy paste what I want to do here, right? So when we send him this prompt, now he will essentially design the workflow, or he will also ask us a few questions how to set up the workflow. So as you can see, we maybe didn't even think about a few things we will need, but he already knows. So he's asking us how many asins we are tracking, right? Because that will affect how we want to store it. Which spreadsheet tool, Slack notifications, you know, should it notify at any price change, one message per asin, or summary of all changes. So suddenly there are so many things I even didn't consider, and he is asking me to clarify this, because he then drafts the proposed architecture of the nodes, right? Because he knows N8N very well, and the system prompt is guiding him how to do that, how to explain everything to us. And then he explains, you know, alternative, which we are tracking less than 10 asins, which in this example we want. He explains our options. So what I will do now, and we will cut it here, I will just answer these questions and we will get back to it. So as we can see, Claude already wrote down the full architecture with all of the node setups, which again might seem a bit overwhelming. I don't recommend to just blindly following it. But that's why we are learning this from scratch, do it manually, and just use this as an assistance, right? It's not that I can just blindly now copy everything and it would work perfectly fine. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go into my N8N here, and we will create a new workflow. So since we are starting essentially from a blank page, what I recommend here, since we said that we are going to track things, you know, staying organized. So this will be our Amazon competitor price tracker workflow. So I will input the name right here, maybe even add some tags for future reference. But now I need to begin, right? And starting from a blank page, I need to add the first step, which is of course a trigger. What triggers this? And eventually we will be adding a daily workflow, daily reminder that will happen automatically. But since we just start to build this, we want to trigger this manually because we will be testing it a lot. So I want to trigger this workflow manually. And so I will set up this trigger when click execute workflow. And now if we think about it, the first step here is to actually have the asins we want to scrape, right? So what I'm gonna do is I need to create my spreadsheet where I want to track things and also list the asins I want to track. So let me create a new spreadsheet. So what we did here, we created a very simple spreadsheet, Amazon competitor price tracker workflow. You know, we have the list of asins here, which will include, and then the tracker. We will have date, asin, price. Currently, we don't need anything else because we just want to track the price in time. And the list of asins, I included that we want to track 3 asins. So we will copy them here. And now we have the list of asins. We have our spreadsheet. So the first step is essentially to get these asins into our workflow. So the workflow knows which asins to scrape and then work with them. So what we're going to do, since these asins are in our spreadsheet, we will click to add a new node and we will search for, as you can see, Google Sheets. Let me zoom in a bit. Google Sheets, and we need to get rows, right? Because our action is that we want to just read the asins that are there. So we will click on get rows, and here we would encounter our first credential setup. I already have my Google account set up here, but what you would do is to create new credential and then just sign in with Google. It's as simple as that to get access to your spreadsheet. So you click sign in, you click yes, and you are good to go. Since I have my Google account here, it is, you know, I will be getting rows. So this is my spreadsheet, Amazon competitor price tracker workflow. And here from the list, it's list asins, right? So as you can see, now I'm editing the node in N8N. And what I did, I asked that I want to get rows from a spreadsheet. I selected my Google account. I said that I want to get the rows, right? Specifying the action that's already pre-made. chose the document, right? That is my spreadsheet, the Amazon competitor, and the particular sheet is asins, right? So I basically pointed him in this direction. Now, what I'm going to do next is that I want to execute the step to see if N8N is actually able to grab the data. Let's see what happens. So as you can see now, we imported the 3 asins. We have a table here, and the 3 asins are here, which is perfect, right? Now I managed to get the data from my spreadsheet into my N8N. And as you can see, it is in section called output. And in the middle, we have the node, and in the left, we have input. And now as you understand, when we are creating an automation that goes A, B, C, so essentially, if we are looking at the node B, input is what came from node A, and output is what will go into the node C, right? So that's what goes in, something happens in the node, and then the output goes out. Now, when we also take a closer look here, you're seeing that we are looking at what's called a table, right? This is a simple overview of the data we just pulled in a table. But there are 2 other ones, right? One is JSON, which if you open this, it is code, right? Because this is a JSON code that we are now just looking in a different way at the same data set, right? So as you can see, we still read the ASIN, we still read the row number, so it is essentially the same thing, just presented in a different way. And we will be working with the JSON code a bit later, but it's just a different way to look at it, right? Again, no need to get intimidated by the code, because we don't really need to understand how the code works, just see that it's here, and we are potentially able to copy it if we need it to, let's say, ask Claude for some direction. We can also see it in a table, but you also see it in a schema here, which allows us to see the data in this way, where we see the row number and the ASIN. So it's just the same data presented in a different way. Now, we executed this and we are happy because we have our ASINs in the workflow right here. And before we create the next node, what I like to do, and what's important, is that we pin the data. Because every time we go through the workflow, we kind of always want to set up, the next node, working with the data from the previous node. We don't always want to run the whole workflow again and again every time we test another node. So what we will do is we pin the data, so the node will always output current data. Especially useful when we start using something like the scraper or AI, and you're essentially paying some money for an action, so you don't want to do the same action every single time, so we pin it, right? As you can see, it's turned purple. The data is pinned for test executions. Beautiful. Now, we have the nodes here. Now, as you can see, we have 3 items. We clicked, and from our row, we are getting 3 items. Those are our 3 ASINs. And if we take a look here, one of the next nodes will be actually scraping Amazon, using Apify to scrape Amazon. And if you don't know Apify, you can create your account, and actually on Apify, you will get a free account with some credits. And these credits are more than enough for some basic scraping. If you set up your account, you will end here in the Apify store. So you can search for, Amazon. You will see there are plenty of scrapers. What I recommend is to find a pricing model that where you essentially pay per event. So you don't need to pay some monthly subscription or something like that. You're paying it every time you use it, right? For this purpose, I actually found one that works very well. It's called Amazon Product Batch Scraper. And why am I looking at this? Is that I need to understand what do I need to send to this Apify scraper, because N8N will be sending information to this scraper to trigger the scrape and return me some data, right? And I need to learn what this particular scraper needs to hear from us, essentially, in order to run the scrape, right? So if we take a look at it, here you can see that you can run this scraper manually, right? So I would just add my ASINs here. Anyone can do it, easy, right? But I'm using N8N. I kind of need to understand what the code looks like in the backend. I need to understand what it looks like, right? So I can send the right call to, or send the right data to this scraper. So what I will do is I will take a look at the JSON. That is the code we need to send here. And as you can see, it's simple. It's actually just a list of ASINs right here, which if I add another ASIN from my price tracker, let me add, let's say this one, just to check, I will add another one here. So this is what if I would be doing manually here, but as I said, I'm doing it with code. Perfect. So it's just a simple list of the ASINs, right? There is nothing else. If I would show you, let's say another one, you might see that, for example, this one, as you can see, it's the same when I do it manually, but JSON is now more complicated. They want to hear this, right? So it's kind of different. I need to identify what that particular scraper needs to hear from us. And this particular one is $40 per month. I don't want to pay that. So here, this one is pay per event. Amazing. This is what I need to send him, right? But as you can see, if I go to my N8N, what our output, it doesn't look the same, right? If I would send him this, he wouldn't know what to do with it because that's not what he wants to get. So I need to manipulate the data, right? I need to change it, and so it's in a format that the scraper can work with. And as you can see, we have 3 items here, but he has them batched like this. So let's try to aggregate the data. As you can see, combine a field from many items into a list in a single item, right? So that looks good. That sounds like something we need. And now, when I see it here, when I open the next node, I see the input. And that's here. The input that's flowing from the previous sheet. 3 items, ASIN, everything is here. Perfect. Output, it's nothing yet because we haven't set it up. And as you can see, I also can ship, the table, the JSON, everything is here. So what I want to do is I want to aggregate them. So now we prepare the data for this particular scraper. I want to make sure that the JSON looks like this. And now what we need to do, we need to fill in the field name. The name of a field in the input items to aggregate together. So for us, those are the ASINs. And what is the name of the field is ASIN, right? But if we take a look at the scraper, they want us to call it ASINs, right? So that is important to keep in mind these little specifics, because otherwise it might not work, right? We want to prevent that. So output field name, we want to rename the field, and now we will call it ASINs. So now if we execute the step, we test it. And as you can see now, I'm seeing the JSON right here. And if I compare it with the one that is here, right, looks the same. So it should work. Again, I cannot guarantee that it will work, but we will now pin it. And as you can see now, from 3 items, we have 1 item. So now we kind of merged it together, and hopefully now it's in a format that in the next step, we can send it over to the scraper in a way that he understands and will send us the data back. Of course, we are scraping it to get the price. So I will go back to my canvas, and now I need to call Apify, right? I need to use the API call. If I was going to, let's say, Asana, sending an email or something, I could find it easily here. But with Apify, we will do actually the HTTP request, which is the API call. We are sending information to Apify and asking for something to return to us, right? We are triggering this action. So we will go the HTTP request. And on the left side, we have our ASINs. And now here we need to set up this HTTP request to send the data to our Apify. So first of all, we are not getting something, we are actually posting, right? We are sending the information to Apify, right? We are sending and calling the specific action. There is some URL, authentication, headers, body. It sounds quite complicated, right? But what we are going to do is we are going to keep it very simple. If we have the URL, that's essentially the URL to make the request to. And if we go here on our Apify, there is a section with APIs, right? And if I got stuck here, remember I have my Claude here, so I can always ask him. He already filled in everything here, so he made it a bit overwhelming for us, but we can then ask for specific steps. It's like, hey, I'm setting up the Apify API, help me figure out, how to make the HTTP request. And he would guide you through this. But here I'm gonna go API endpoints. That's essentially telling us where to contact it, what is the request to make. And here we actually want to not only run the scrape, we also want to get the data, right? So we will find run actor and get dataset items. And as you can see, this is the long to post. This is the whole URL. That's what we need, right? We are looking for an URL. So I will go here, copy it, and then I go back here, URL, paste it. Now we have the URL, right? And we are just not sending something to the Apify. We also want to send them the asins, and there's still nothing, right? We just set up, we know where to send it, but what are we sending, right? So here we have what we need to send to the Apify actor to run this scrape. So we will be sending body, we will be sending the JSON, which we created here, and the body will be using the JSON. And again, the easy way to do this is that when we are sending the JSON, I can drag this into here to kind of specify what I want. So I will go back to expression and I will drag these right here. But actually in this case, I want to send the full JSON. Here you can see the result, and this is not what I want, right? That's not what I want to send. I actually want to send here the asins, as you can see in the format. So this is kind of the code that's representing what's right here. And I want to send the whole thing because I already aggregated here. So I want to send the whole thing I created. And this JSON is the representation of what we actually have here. As you can see, asins, the 3 asins are right here. And when I take a look, it basically is the same thing, right? So now it should be good to go. And when we click execute step, we should get the scrape of the data from that actor. So let's see what happens. So we waited for like 15 seconds, 20 seconds, and we got back this. So as you can see, it worked. We got some data. If we got an error again, I would go back to my Claude and say like, hey, it's not working, help me. But thankfully it did work. And now we have this data. As you can see, there's a lot of stuff because the scraper doesn't care that we want only price. He just scrapes what he's supposed to do. And as you can see, there is usual information what he's actually scraping. So he will return everything, right, for the asins. This is what he does. And as you can see, we can also see the runs, how much it costs us to do this, 0.01, right? So basically nothing. So as you can see, I have $5 free. I didn't pay for anything and I can do this easily. So it's beautiful. Now I have, let's take a look at the table. That might be easier. So I see the asin, we have price, currency, quantity, main image URL, product reviews, product images, and then the raw data, right? And we have this for 3 items. So as we said, if I scroll, let me put it here. We have it for 3 items, right? So that's perfect. Now let's spin it because as I said, every time we don't want to run the same thing and pay those 9 cents or whatever every single time we run this. So we will pin the data. And now what we want to do is we want to track the data in our spreadsheet, right? So we are a tracker. What we want is date, we want asin, and we want price. We don't want all of these things that we scraped into our spreadsheet. Maybe in the future we can add some of the things we care about, but in this case we only care about the date, the asin, and the price. So how are we gonna turn this into something that we can actually put into our spreadsheet? So the easiest way is to actually ask Claude how to turn this data, right? So if I would go here and copy this, and now I would go ahead and ask Claude like, hey, how can I turn this data into those 3 data points I need? So let me do that. So as I said, I asked Claude for help. I told him, I copied the whole output I had here from Apify, this whole complicated JSON, and I just simply copy pasted and asked, this is the output from Apify. I want you to take this JSON and as it is and write the code based on this JSON to transform it into 3 data points. Refer solely to the JSON I sent you. I want today's date, asin, price, nothing else. So he analyzes it and then he gives me this code. I don't know what it means, but I don't really care as long as it works, right? So I will just, what I do, I copy it, and he already tells me node 3 is the code, extract price data. So he said node is code in JavaScript. So if I go here, add a new node, and he tells me to do code, run custom JavaScript, sounds good, code in JavaScript, nice. As you can see here, I have the input, right? Looks about right, that's what we are getting from the Apify, and here is code. I don't know what it means, but you know what? I'm gonna trust Claude, and I just copy pasted it, right? As it is here, I copy pasted it. I don't know what it means, but let's see. Execute step. And perfect. It seems that we got the data we want. So if I look at the table, again, we got the date, we got our asyncs, and we got the price, right? So that's what we wanted. And I can see it again, schema, table, JSON, amazing. Now I can pin the data. And this code node is essentially one of the ways to do this, right? There are other nodes where we could potentially use, I believe it's called fields or edit fields. Right? So we could kind of do this manually, that you are manually mapping the inputs from the previous node. So I could do that manually, but sometimes it's easier to do it with the code. If you can ask Claude, which as I said, I created the system prompt, so he writes the code for you, even though you don't have to understand it. As I promised, you don't need to know how to code. So far, we got the asyncs from our spreadsheets, we put it together, send it to Apify, and use the code to create the items right here. So we have 3 items in the format we need. So what we want to do now is we want to go here and actually put them into our spreadsheet, right? That is as simple as that. So the next step is to track the prices, because in order to compare the prices, we want to track them every day. And if there is a change, so we will be comparing, we want a notification that something happened. So I will go here, and now we actually want to write them down. So I'm going back to Google Sheets, and we will be going append row in a sheet, basically writing into a spreadsheet. So let me find our spreadsheet here, Amazon competitor prices. Here we are going to tracker this time. And now we want to map each column manually. As you can see, we have it beautifully done here. So what is a date, right? He wants us to map it out. He sees date, async, price. And he wants us to map it out. So what is date, what is async, what is price? Well, that's easy, right? We will drag it here. This is date. And as you can see, he already shows the result. This is async. And the last one here, this is price. Okay, looks good. Execute. So we are executing the node. And as you can see, he did what we asked him to do here. Is the data still the same, but the moment of truth, is it here? Yes, it is. So we have the dates, we have the prices, and we have the async. So the idea is that tomorrow, here we could see 25th of October and so on. But what I'm gonna do for the comparison, because we're not gonna wait here for a day to get another data set. So actually what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy this and change these days to the 23rd. Let's imagine that this is from dataset from yesterday. And let's say one price increased, the other one will be like this, 35, and the other one stays the same. So we can kind of use it as an example if our automation will recognize that the prices changed, you know, from yesterday to today. So one increased, one decreased, and one stayed the same. So what we want to do now in the automation, we wrote down the data. So let me pin it again. And what we want to do essentially is that the automation always goes, downloads the data, writes it into a spreadsheet. And the next step is what? Is to compare the data. Take today's date versus yesterday's to compare it. So now we wrote into a spreadsheet. So now we want to go back and get all of the data from our spreadsheet again, right? So we will keep it simple. We will get rows in a sheet. We've already done this. We know how to do it. So I'm getting rows in this spreadsheet, in my tracker, and that's pretty much all I need. Execute step. And now I can see something happen. Like, why is there so many, right? What happened here? We have the 23rd here, 24, the prices. Everything looks good. But why is there, again, this data set again and again? And there's, again, another page. Why is there 18 items? Well, this answer is actually quite simple, because he's executing the workflow based on the number of items. And this time we just want to read the data. We don't need to do it 3 times, because he had 3 asyncs. So he's reading it 3 times. Getting rows, he does that 3 times. Therefore, we have 18 points, even though we should have 6. So what I need to do, I want to do to settings and execute only once, right? And if I then execute again, now I have my 6 items. 23rd of October, 24th, my asins, my prices, right? So I will now pin the data again right here, and my node is ready. As I mentioned before, documenting and keeping things organized, which is something I told you to do, and I'm not doing it here. Keeping the nodes, named properly, what you're doing here. You can change the name here. You can add potentially, sticky nodes, as I showed you with the nodes. So you can say this section of the automation is doing that. Just keep it organized, because the next time you open this, you will be like, oh, what did I build here, right? So now we have this sheet. We have 6 items. We are gathering the data from the spreadsheet. Before I do the next step, I understand this, might not be the best way to do it. But the way I build it is just so it works, right? If you spend a little bit more time, look at the more optimized way to do this, you might figure out something better. But here we are really trying to stick to the basics and show you how to do it. So if you know how to automate, and don't hate me for these steps that you would do it better. Of course, there are better ways to do it, but we are just trying to keep it as simple as possible. So now we have this output. And what I essentially want to do is that I want to compare today's price with yesterday's, right? And I want to do that every day, so I can say that if today price changes, I know that. So the only thing I'm doing is comparing today with yesterday price for each and every ASIN. But since we are tracking the prices every single day, we kind of need to specify what is today and what is yesterday, right? And again, I will do this with the code node, because why would I try to figure this out when I can just go to Claude and tell him what I want to do? So I will again tell him like, hey, I have this is the JSON code I have, and help me do the thing I want to do. So now we did the same thing. We copy pasted the JSON we got, that the output, this is my output JSON, write me a code that will do the following. It will compare today's prices with yesterday's and identify whether there was a price change or not. Refer solely to the JSON I sent you. So he sent me this, but actually what I wanted to do, what I noticed one thing, I asked him for a minor change, because he merged the data. So I just asked him, I need to compare each item separately. The output should include true or false, whether there was a price change, and then by how much. So he writes the code, and as you can see, the code is getting a bit complicated, but it doesn't matter, because with Claude, it usually works. So, and if it doesn't, we can ask for more guidance. So what I can do is I go code here. I have the input. I copy paste the code here, execute the step to see what comes out. And here again, we have our table. So we have our ASIN, price change, true or false. That's perfect. That's what we need. Yesterday's price, today's price, and then the difference. So now we compare the prices from today and yesterday. We have for our ASINs. Perfect. So we are getting near the end, right? We are keeping it on time. So let's take a look. The next one will be actually figure out which of these changed and which didn't, because as we said, we want a notification on Slack. If something changed, notify us on Slack. And since we are saying if, we will find the if node and find basically comparing whether it's true or false. So is true or false, right? So true means price change. So I will go true. If price change is true. And as you can see, we have true branch, 2 items, price change to true, false branch, false. This one didn't change. So for the false branches, you can see 1 item going into the false one, 2 items going into the true one. For the false one, we are finished. We don't care if the price doesn't change. We don't need a notification. But for this one, we want to be notified on Slack, but we just don't want, to see just, yesterday's price. We want something a little bit nicer that is formatted as a notification for Slack. So what I'm gonna do actually is I'm gonna take the JSON, and now again I'm gonna use the code as Claude to actually, hey, use the data to summarize it into one Slack notification, and use emojis, make it nice, and comment on that. So we have the code. So he transformed this into a nice message on Slack we can easily read. We can then post it into our price changes notification channel. So let's copy this and do the thing. So I simply ask Claude posting the current JSON I have. Now I have this JSON, write me a code that will prepare it as a message for Slack, refer solely to the JSON. The notification will include all of the items in one message and include some nice emojis for easy readability. So as you can see, he prepared it here. I like it, so I'm gonna copy it. Again, go here, find my code node, code in JavaScript, copy paste it here, execute step to see what's going on. And here we have the message. Looks good, message, price alert, price in yesterday, today, increased by 1. Amazing, so we will pin it. And now the last step, we have the message. So of course, the last step is Slack. What we will be doing, as you can see, a lot of actions here. We will be sending a message. And so we will send message operation, send message to. So we will send it to user or channel. I will send it to user. And from a list, again, I will find myself. So I will send it to myself. And now the message text. What is the message text? Well, we can, again, drag this message as an expression of the JSON because it will be changing, right? That is why we are using the code for that, because it's changing, it's variable. So we need to include it as the JSON. And now, the moment of truth, we will click execute step. We see something happened here, JSON, but we don't care about that. What we care about is our Slack. And as you can see, what came to me here, Amazon price alert, ASIN yesterday, 34.35 increased by $1. This ASIN decreased by 2. 2 price change detected, automated with N8N workflow. So now you understand how to create a simple automation. We learned quite a lot in this simple one, because now we can combine it. We can send it. You can send it via email. You can connect more action items, what to do, right? You can gather more information than just prices, right? Really, the sky is the limit. Now you understand the basics. Now you understand how all of this works, and hopefully you are not as intimidated, because maybe I made some mistakes, maybe it could be better, but the most important thing is it works. Maybe if I had 200 ASINs, it would probably break, and I would have to explain to my Claude like, hey, actually I need to batch it and do these advanced things. But for now, this automation works very well. So what I'm gonna do now, we're gonna pause the video, and I'm gonna add new ASINs and just run the automation again to see, what happens and if it all works out. So now what we did, we added a new ASIN into our workflow. We also added some data set, so we have like a 22nd of October, 23rd. So now we have a little bit more data here. We have another ASIN. And what we're gonna do now is to run the full workflow once again. So I will execute the workflow. And as you can see, you see how it's working through the nodes. This one is taking a little bit longer because that is the Apify node, that kind of needs to scrape, return the data. He already did. Now it's running and it's done. Workflow successful. And as you can see, I received a new notification here. Amazon price alert. I see the ASIN yesterday, today, increase, decrease, increase, decrease. So the automation is working very well, and we are done here. So we can save. Then I would click, replace the trigger here with the schedule. So what I would do, schedule trigger, I would do days between triggers, start every AM, and then remove this one, connect it here, like this, and then activate the workflow, and it would run every day at 8 AM. So that's pretty much it for this automation. But now I want you to think about one important thing. We didn't really use AI in this particular automation, right? We built this, but what this allows us, and what I will cover in the future videos, is that, as I mentioned, if I go here, yes, I want to save this, and I create a new workflow, you can find that there is actually an AI agent. And I want to show this to you because I want to cover this in the future videos, because here, the AI agent actually is where we implement the AI into the workflow, the large language model. And as I mentioned before, here, we choose the chat model, we choose the memory and the tools he can interact with, right? So here you can choose your OpenAI, you can choose Claude. In memory, you can usually use simple memory here. But more importantly, you can give him tools. You can give him tools like, hey, you can now work with Asana. You can create tasks in Asana. You can do X, Y, and Z. So what I could do at the end of the automation, instead of sending me a notification to Slack, I can actually send it to an agent and tell him to do more with it. Because what I want to do here, I also want to show you just a quick example. If you create like a very simple AI agent, just for the purpose of this video, we created an AI agent that is connected to a model. He has access to spreadsheets, and he has ability to create tasks in Asana, right? It's very straightforward, very easy. And here we have a chat. We can actually talk to him, right? The same way you would talk to your large language model. So we can talk to him right here. And these agents have also a system prompt, right? So essentially you tell him what he's supposed to do with the data he is getting, right? So this is just a simple prompt that this particular one is a meeting assistant, and he processes meeting transcripts and creates actionable tasks, right? So if you are interested, I can cover these in my upcoming videos, because what this can do, it's really extremely powerful. Because in this example, I just put like a meeting transcript right here into Google Sheet. It can be wherever, but for the purpose, I put it into Google Sheet. We created Asana workspace right here, right? So in Asana workspace for him that he has access, those are the tools he has, right? Google Sheets and Asana, as you can see, the same thing we did just right now, you know, transcript, sheet 1, he has access, he knows everything, what to do with it. And now I can talk to him. And this could be triggered automatically or via chat, but I can tell you like, hey, can you use the transcript from my spreadsheet, identify the action items, and create tasks in Asana accordingly. So we send him a message, and we see him working. Now he went to here, he took the transcript, he's thinking, identifying the action items for the transcript. So you can see how he's operating. This is actually quite cool, right? That you can see all of this. And now he's creating tasks in Asana. He says that he created 6 tasks. Now he's creating a reply. And now he told us, I created the following task in Asana based on the transcript. He created the due dates based on this transcript, you know, the tasks. So as you can see, he described the tasks with the due dates in Asana. And this is really just the simplest possible thing. Now imagine, combine it with the automation, use the agent, give him the tools, and as I promised, you've learned the 80% of N8N you are going to use if you want to build your automations. Now, what I recommend is to watch this video next, where I cover how to set up your MCPs so you really put your Claude, your ChatGPT to the next level, give them access to tools. It's really detailed. It will allow you to set all of that up. And now if you need these templates that I created here, you know, just for reference, I will include them in the link in the description. So that's it for today, and I will see you next week. Bye.